I'm Connor and welcome back to another episode of Old's Oscar Countdown. And this week we're going to be following up the sort of part one of last week with the part two best animated feature predictions. Usually I only do one video a week, but this week I decided to break it up into two videos so I can give cinematography its own love and anime its own love after the recently announced Annie Awards, which happened yesterday. But if you're new to the series, what I do every single week is pick a category and I give my predictions as to what I think will get nominated for the 2022 Oscars. Give a bunch of historical analysis, give a bunch of statistical analysis, trying to figure out what's going to get nominated because of precursors, because of general sort of appreciation, and sort of analyze the Oscar race. We also do a bunch of other stuff in terms of award season, Golden Globe predictions, Critics' Choice reaction analysis. I hope you guys are appreciating the videos. If so, please give me a like and comment down below. Ultimately, this is a place that I want to have a great sort of conversation in the comments down below, giving thoughts on what's going to get nominated or not. That's ultimately the ultimate goal of the channel, and I hope you succeed in doing that. But without further ado, let's get into my best animated feature predictions with my first pick. Now, I do want to mention that this is not necessarily in order of what I think is going to win, but in order of the likelihood of it getting nominated. So in my first slot, I'm going to go with Encanto.
Mira, Belle, the fate of the family is going to come down to you.
I can't do this.
Let me help you. The rats told me everything. Don't eat those.
From director Jared Bush and Byron Howard, the duo behind Zootopia, the most recent movie that won Disney a Best Animated Feature prize. And the reason why I have it in this kind of slot is because Disney movies in the past sort of 10 years have been doing very well. There was sort of a renaissance, of course, in the 90s, and then a bit of a slowdown in the mid-2000s, and then once Wreck-It Ralph happened in 2012, there really has been an unprecedented amount of nominations and wins. 2012, Wreck-It Ralph probably should have won, but didn't. Then the next year, 2013, Frozen wins. Then the next year after that, 2014, Big Hero 6 wins. Then 2015, take a year off. Then 2016, Disney wins again with Zootopia. Now, the Zootopia team is back for Encanto, a brand new musical with songs written and performed by Lin-Manuel Miranda. He's the guy who's worked with Disney before with Moana, which also got nominated. Now, this movie isn't doing sort of gangbusters at the box office. However, it is going to be released on Disney Plus in a couple of days, and I do expect that to be sort of the late-breaking family musical that everyone appreciates and sort of loves and watches with their family. The people who have seen it very rave about the movie, talk about high critical reviews, Rotten Tomatoes, things like that. Kind of a sleeper hit because it was kind of not high concept and people weren't sure how to advertise and sort of relate to it, but it seems like the people who do see it really love the movie. So you got the talent of Lin-Manuel Miranda, who's also directing Tick, Tick, Boom, so he has that behind him too, in terms of just being on the campaign and award season trail. The movie recently, yesterday, got 9 nominations at the Annie Awards, which was 1 less than 10, which went to the Raya and the Last Dragon for the most amount of nominations. So it got 2, acting nominations in terms of voice acting. It got in for writing. It got in all the sort of key places at the Annie Awards. Shows broad support for the movie. Got in at Critics' Choice. Got in at Golden Globes. I think is peaking at the right time. It's being released here. It will be the sort of Christmas movie, and I think if it resonates with a lot of Academy members, which I do think it will, this could be a movie that could even win. Although right now, just because of the pedigree of Lin-Manuel Miranda, because of Disney behind it, because musicals have done so well in this category, even a Frozen 2 and a Wreck-It Ralph 2, I mean, they do get nominated, even if they don't win. Disney has a great pedigree, and I expect Encanto to follow suit. But my number 2 pick, I actually think, if gets nominated, is maybe more likely to win, and that's going to be Luca.
There's a million things you think you can't do. All you need is a chance to try.
Something's fishy with you two.
This is a Pixar movie, and that's frankly all you need to say, because ever since the inception of the category, Pixar has pretty much dominated this category, particularly when they are nominated. In the 14 years that a Pixar movie has been nominated for Best Animated Feature, 11 of those 14 years it has won. I mean, even upsets like Brave, or even something like Soul last year, or Toy Story 4, where it was sort of unsure if it was going to go to a movie like Klaus. every year it seems like when a Pixar movie gets nominated, because they almost always do, they win. Now sometimes there's some disappointing misses. For example, Finding Dory or Monsters University won't get nominated, or for the most part they don't nominate those sequels. They very rarely don't nominate an original Pixar movie, and very rarely does an original Pixar movie not win when it's in this category. So here we have Luca. Now I do have some concerns. It's a very small scale story. It's not sort of high concept. It's not as heady as past sort of more adult-ish kind of Pixar movies like A Soul or an Inside Out. That being said, it is a great sort of summer vibe hangout movie. It's a small story, but you really love the characters, and it has strong critical reviews. It resonated when it was released on Disney Plus in the summer, and this is still an original Pixar movie. It's not necessarily the most original idea in that sense, but it is still original, still is unique, and I think that if it does get nominated, which I do think it will, it got 8 Annie nominations, so it's being appreciated from that side, the animators. It also got in for Critics' Choice and Golden Globes, so it has some overlap there. From Pixar, original, it's just everything adds up. It's not the most critically acclaimed or seen as like this amazing top 5 Pixar movie. It's not that way. However, a movie like Brave can win. So if a movie like that can win, which is sort of more a middle tier Pixar, or a movie like Onward, which a lot of people think is middle tier, I really like that movie. But for a lot of people, that's the more middle tier. If those middle tier, which I think Luca's kind of in that range, if those movies can get nominated, I think this will have no problem. Luca can have no problem ultimately getting nominated. Then at my third slot, I went with Raya and the Last Dragon.
Maybe it's broken because you don't trust anyone. You just have to take the first step.
Now this is a movie that feels like it's been out, over a year ago, all the way back in March. However, when it was released, it did resonate. Strong critical reviews on Rotten Tomatoes. A lot of people watched it on Disney Plus, and it is more in the line of past Disney animation winners, unlike an Encanto. Frozen one, which was a musical, but that was a sensation. Encanto is not that sort of Frozen level sensation, and oftentimes the big hero sixes, the Zootopias, even something like a Wreck-It Ralph. These are movies that are more, less musicals and more just sort of story-based, action-based movies. And Raya and the Last Dragon is this mix of fairy tale, princess, action movie, and does so in a way that sort of combines different cultures and I think really resonate with audience members, particularly the animations branch. I was a little bit surprised to see that this got the most amount of nominations, 10 at the Annie Awards. So, well, that's not necessarily a sign that, oh, you're going to win. I mean, we have movies like Missing Link or Wolfwalkers get the most amount of nominations at the Annies and then ultimately not win. But those movies did get nominated. So with those sort of 10 nominations, a sign of approval from Critics' Choice and this Annie's Animation Guild, I think it's very confident that Disney, once again I mentioned their track record, has been doing very well. I do think that it can also get nominated here for Raya and the Last Dragon, and the movie itself is a little bit more adult and it's used a little bit older, and it appeals to more people who may not necessarily love musicals. It is definitely kind of like an action, fairy tale, epic kind of a movie, and even though it's released in March, I do think some people are going to forget about the movie. I still think they're going to remember it and have a nice enough memory of it to get it nominated. Then in my fourth slot, I went with The Mitchells versus the Machines.
Hold on a second.
What's a Furby?
Why would someone build that?
At one point, people thought that this could be maybe a spoiler contender because Sony's a sort of rising animation studio winning for a movie like Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. However, I don't think so. I have it here in my fourth slot because it missed out on the Golden Globes. Now, we've mentioned before that the Golden Globes has very little correlation to the Oscars, and it's, for the most part, its impact is in its sort of television broadcast, which it may not even have this year. And particularly with the animation category, when we compare Golden Globes animation to Oscars animation, there is a lot of overlap. There's not always overlap, but there is, for the most part, the same amount of animated nominated movies, and then the winners often overlap. What's interesting, though, is that The Mitchells vs. the Machines did not get nominated at the Golden Globes, and no film has never been not nominated at the Golden Globes and then gone on to win in this category. So that really hurts, I think, Mitchells vs. the Machines' chances. It got in at the Critics' Choice Awards. It's being pushed by Netflix, and I think Netflix always does a terrific job with their campaigns getting their movies nominated. I think this will be the same thing. Has the pedigree of a sort of up-and-coming Sony Pictures animation, but was sold to Netflix, so Netflix will also push the movie on, its its platform and through its campaigning. Now, I think it may hurt its reputation that it's kind of on Netflix because it's not seen as this big theatrical event. It was kind of just sort of quietly and in certain respects released onto Netflix, even though it's one of my favorite movies of the year. It's a really terrific movie. That being said, it also got 8 nominations at the Annies, so even though I have some concerns with the fact that it was released on Netflix and doesn't have that sort of theatrical buzz, and it missed out on the Golden Globes, I still think that it's the highest rated movie out of all these, 98% on Rotten Tomatoes. Very well acclaimed, easy to watch because it's on Netflix. I think, will appeal to the Academy members, and the main character is a cinephile herself. So there are some sort of a great comments on movies, but also sort of technology that I think are really interesting. So like I said, highly acclaimed movie, very visually distinct and different than the other movies, so it's not like there's going to be any confusion. Sony has been doing well in the past. Even though it missed out on the Globes, it got on Critics' Choice, it got a bunch of nominations at the Annies, it got high critical reviews. I still think Mitchell's vs. the Machines is a contender, maybe not to win, but to get nominated. And then my 5th slot, I went with Flea, which is...
Ik merker, at der skal ske noget. Her starter jo min historie.
Flea, which is one of the more interesting animated movies because it's an animated movie that's also competing in Best Documentary, that's also competing in Best International Feature. It made the shortlist for both international feature and documentary feature. This was a bit of a contention at the Oscars that you can't really sort of overlap in these categories. The most obvious comparison is something like Waltz with Bashir, which was not allowed to compete in Best Documentary or Animated Feature, or maybe it was an animated feature. It definitely wasn't a documentary and only got the 1 nomination for Best International Feature. Those rules have sort of been thrown out the window, and a couple of years ago I think there was an important movie called Honeyland, which got nominated in both documentary and international feature, the first movie of its kind to do so, which I think opens up this path of a movie like Flea, which is appearing on a lot of these year-end lists. I think has a chance now to sort of be eligible in all 3 of these categories because the animation isn't as impressive as a sort of $200 million Raya and the Last Dragon, but it is an interesting animation. It's more of the independent style, and the sort of 5th slot at the Oscars, they like to reward these kind of more independent, usually foreign films like The Red Turtle or The Wind Rises from sort of these acclaimed independent animated studios. And I think Flea kind of fits that mold, being very different and unique compared to the other 4 studio-made films. Like I mentioned, it's on a lot of year-end lists. This is also being campaigned by Neon, and this is the sort of company that campaigned Parasite to win for Best Picture in an international feature, in which everybody thought that would never happen, and then ultimately it did. So I do have a lot of faith in their team to get Flea that kind of recognition. I mean, I think they're going to be pushing that movie for Best Picture. However, I don't think that there's a chance for that. I do think there's a chance for animation because it's so well liked, because this 5th slot sort of open for independent, but also because it was shortlisted in documentary and international feature, could get in for both. And hey, if it's good enough to get into those categories, maybe you'll also get in here, maybe a little bit of a redo with something like Waltz with Bashir. Hard to say exactly for sure, but I believe in Neon in terms of campaigning it. I believe in the movie in terms of its intense critical appreciation, and I think it's a movie that will resonate with Academy members. Animation is maybe the most snobby in the sense that because it doesn't have necessarily traditionally terrific, highly expensive animation, but I do think it uses its animation in a very unique way, and I think will excel and ultimately be so impressive that it gets that nomination. Then in my possible contenders category, my first one is going to be Belle. This is the latest film from animated legend Mamoru Hosoda, who I've seen almost all of his movies, actually all of his movies, and he's only been nominated once, his most recent one for Mirai, but this is being distributed by G-Kids, which is a legendary, it's only 10 years old, but it's a legendary kind of animation studio, and I've been talking about them for years because they have an incredible track record of getting nominated. They often are the sort of American distribution arm. They also campaign heavily for these independent movies, picking up great movies along the way. As a matter of fact, in their 11 years since being a company, they've garnered 12 nominations for their films. So, even something like Wolfwalkers last year was a G-Kids example. I believe The Red Turtle in years past. Every sort of year that you have these sort of great independent foreign films that get nominated in the animated feature category, and they do a great job at that. So Mamoru Hosoda, his last film, Mirai, got nominated. Belle is a movie that's being shown in IMAX theaters in January. I think we'll be peaking late at the right time where people see it. If a lot of people catch those IMAX screenings and are so amazed by the animation, particularly the kind of that anime style, I think it could sort of push it over the edge from this kind of legendary Japanese auteur. Right now, I think it's going to be Flea just because it still has a little bit more notoriety. Belle hasn't shown up as much sort of top 10 of the year-end lists, and doesn't have as sort of that critical acclaim as something like Flea, which is seen as one of the best movies of the year. But it is a little bit more of a traditional in the sense that G-Kids has a movie almost every year get nominated. It is in the sort of form of a Wind Rises or The Red Turtle or When Marnie Was There. It does sort of fit that mold in the same way Flea doesn't. So if Flea starts to show a little bit of a sign of weakness, I think maybe Belle can sort of step in and take that slot. And then my last possible contender, I went with The Summit of the Gods, which is another independent animated film distributed by Netflix. The direct kind of comparison is, because it's also a French movie, is I Lost My Body, which was a movie that ultimately got nominated for the Oscars. However, that movie was a little bit more strange and really used its animated medium. The Summit of the Gods is a very traditional drama. It's, at times you wonder why it was even decided to be done as an animated feature, because it doesn't really utilize it in sort of over-exaggerated character movements or things like that. It's very restrained in that sense. Now, that's not to say it's a bad movie. It's a terrific movie. May crack my top 10. I was really impressed by it. That being said, I do have some concerns over people ultimately seeing it because it doesn't have that sort of unique, high concept kind of a story. It doesn't have the big studios behind it. Netflix is already pushing Mitchells versus the Machines. It is critically very well liked, but it's not on the critical sort of love and admiration as something like Flea. So there's some elements against that there. There could be some animation snobbery because they may sort of find the same thing I did, which was like, there's not really a whole grand, interesting use of the animation genre. That being said, it's still a terrific movie that really makes you thinking at the end of it. I highly recommend it to a lot of people, but I do think that because it's got sort of the respectability, the high critical acclaim from Netflix, a little bit more of a drama, so appeals to older voters. I think that matters too. Could be a real contender, although still on the outside. But that's about it, guys. I hope you enjoyed the video. Make sure you comment below. Let me know your favorite animated movies of this year. And stay tuned for about a month or so. I'm going to be doing my own award show called The Connors, in which I will be giving out an animated feature award. But that's about it, guys. I hope you enjoyed the video. And until next time, stay tuned.